Everyone, the committee meeting on local government and elections is now in session. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senators Gannon,
Here.
Crawford, Carter, Coleman, Koenig, Rizzo, Washington.
We have a quorum. We will be hearing HJR86 and execing on HJR86. We will be hearing Representative Black's HJR86. Representative, when you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is John Black, House District 129, Webster County, Missouri. Thank you for allowing us to present HJR86 72 and 119, sponsored by myself, the gentleman from Randolph, the gentleman from St. Charles, 103. The purpose of this HJR, Madam Chair, members of the committee, is to protect the integrity and stability of the Missouri Constitution. The principal manner in which that is done is by requiring not only a majority of the voters in the state, but a majority of the voters in the state's congressional districts. This would move the Constitution closer to the Constitution of the United States of America, which, since the adoption of that Constitution, has been amended 27 times. The Missouri Constitution, since its most recent revision in 1945, has been amended over 100 times. It also would intend to allow all areas of the state to have a fair voice in the amendment of our Constitution through the IP process. An example that was disturbing to, at least to me, was that with regard to recreational marijuana, that amendment passed by 15 of the 115 counties in the state of Missouri, or less than 15%. I believe, members of the House believe, I believe by the adoption of this resolution that there should be a more equitable voice by all areas of the state, certainly including the rural areas. Be happy to discuss the resolution in more detail. It is similar to resolutions I know the Senate has heard. Be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions from the committee for the bill handler? Seeing none, we will start with witnesses in support. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Samuel Lee with Campaign Life Missouri to go on record in support of HJR86, 72, and 119. I'm not going to repeat the testimony that I had earlier this session about the concerns about a tyranny of the majority, and also about how our Constitution already requires larger than a simple majority in certain circumstances, 4/7 or 2/3 for some school bond issues and things like that. I prefer, and others have called this a concurrent majority, I prefer to call this a consensus majority. And that is, it requires a consensus of Missourians to approve this. And certainly others, and certainly in the media, have talked about how this is all related to abortion and this or that, and of course it is. But this is a measure that affects liberal or conservative, whatever label you want to put on it, measures that may come before the people. So, for instance, if pro-Second Amendment people decided, after November of next year, that this is hypothetical, of course, that when you turn 18, everyone in the state gets a free gun paid for by taxpayers, and they want to put that in the Constitution. Well, under this proposal, a simple majority would not be enough. It would require 5 of 8 congressional districts. Likewise, if the abortion amendment is added to the Constitution and pro-lifers wanted to come in down the road and amend the Constitution and say, we want to change it, it would require a consensus of the majority in 5 of 8 congressional districts plus a simple majority. So to look at this as somehow this is the big abortion debate or this big liberal versus conservative, I think is really misapprehending what this is all about. I've made my points. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we fully support this as good government and building a consensus among Missourians.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any questions for, yes, Senator?
I honestly, Sam, I don't have any questions about this. I think we're going to have a long conversation about it today, but I just wanted to say I am grateful for being able to respectfully disagree with you all these years.
Sure.
And this is probably one of my last hearings with you, and I don't know if we've agreed on much, but you've always handled yourself with class, and I appreciate that.
Senator, it's been good working with you, even though we have
Truthfully,
disagreed. But I've been here
You've always been a class act.
been here 40 years, and every session has its own character.
Yep.
And this session does. But it's really, this is the best job in the world, and I hope you have felt that way in your years here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't want to let it go by without saying I appreciate being able to respectfully disagree with you.
Very good. Thank you,
Thank
Senator.
you, Senator.
Couldn't agree with you more, Senator. Going to miss seeing you, Sam. Okay, anybody else have a question for the witness? Next witness in support. You may begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members
morning.
of the committee. For the record, Susan Klein, representing Missouri Right to Life, here to go on record in support of the House Committee Sub HJR86, 72, and 119. I won't belabor the points either. I'll just say that, Missourians across the state, really, if we're going to change the constitutions, or the Constitution, but both of them really, but if you're going to change the Missouri State Constitution, I believe more people need to have a voice and a vote. And our polling has showed that across the board, I mean, you can classify this as one issue or the other, but our polling, and we wanted to know the truth about Missouri, where Missourians are, whether you're pro-life, pro-abortion, moderate, Missourians want to protect our Constitution. We want to protect our way of life in Missouri. So I think, doing that and through this legislative body would be a good thing to do.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Yes, Senator Carter.
Good morning.
Good morning, Senator.
How long have you been coming up here fighting for these various issues that you?
26 years.
And how long have we been talking about IP reform or ratification reform?
Goodness, at least 8 years.
Yeah.
So
this is not. I asked that just to say this is not a new issue, subject to just one issue that everybody is trying to make it, but it is something that it's interesting to me that we've had all of these issues come to the forefront about changing our Constitution, but it seems like it's coming at a faster pace, and I think that's bringing more and more attention. So anyway, thank you for the question.
thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Next in support. First in opposition. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Connor Lubert testifying on behalf of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, and we'd like to go on record in opposition to HJR 86. We have testified against every single one of these attempts to restrict the initiative petition process, and so I won't really belabor the point, but I do want to just point out that this is going to end one person, one vote, which is something that we support. One person, one vote. We do go into more detail, and I will provide a written copy of our testimony from the Executive Director, Denise Lieberman. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next in opposition. You may begin when you're ready. Otto?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. Just a quick reiteration of the points we made on previous joint resolutions this session. The first one is, for 203 years, Missouri has relied on simple majority vote for the adoption of each of our 4 constitutions and the amendments thereto. So this is a long-standing practice that Missouri has followed consistently since it became a state. We would also continue to inform the committee that our opinion is, and we think you all should look at, what is really the underlying issue, not the symptom. So the underlying issue is that it is a natural tension that there's an election process and there are things that matter in the election process, and it produces a result in terms of who's here in the legislature. And the things that are priority to them, there's a different aspect to what do a majority of Missourians feel on a particular issue. And it may not line up all the time. It's perfectly normal to expect on occasion, and that's why we have in the Constitution the citizens reserving the right to have the initiative petition process. What we've seen, though, is that if the citizens perceive that taking the time, the effort, and the resource to do an initiative petition to change a statute can be brushed aside by an act of the General Assembly, and they don't have a say, then they're not going to choose to take that trouble and have that kind of an outcome, and instead it is essentially predictable that they would continue to use the Constitution because that means that they have a say in any changes there too. So we would encourage, rather than this whole process of trying to undo 203 years of using the simple majority approval for constitutional amendments, look at the underlying issue. The underlying issue is the citizens perceive the statutory IP can be swept aside without their input. So if you change the statutory IP process through a constitutional amendment, but change it so that if the General Assembly wants to undo or change something that's done through the trouble of a statutory IP, that those same voters would then have a say in whether they concur in those changes. And if it's kind of a correction to something that was not done properly in the IP process, you could expect a pretty high likelihood that the citizens would agree. If, on the other hand, you're just trying to brush it aside, probably you would expect there would be some resistance to that. And that's probably the kind of discussion the state of Missouri has. Those are our comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Yes, Senator.
I just wanted to add, most days you're okay too, Otto.
Any other questions or statements for the witness?
Thank you, Madam
Seeing
Chair.
none, thank you, Otto. Next in opposition. And you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regrettably, I do need to testify in opposition. This is Ron Calzone, one of the directors of Missouri First. Of course, I very much like the concurrent majority piece of this piece of legislation, other than the fact that it doesn't apply to any amendment proposed by constitutional conventions. So understand that this would only raise the bar, require concurrent majority, if the legislature or a petition proposed an amendment, not if a constitutional convention proposed an entirely new constitution or a single amendment, unlike HJR74, which covers all three. Also understand that this particular HJR is not just about ratification, it's also about the signature collection process for petitions, which I think is a problem. The people of Missouri do not want their IP process messed with. They want the ability to make an end run around the legislature when it is oppressive or unresponsive. They do, however, I believe, as Susan mentioned, want to raise the bar on the ratification process. So they think it's easy, it's not too hard, it's not too easy to ask the question, but it's too easy to answer the question, shall we amend the Constitution? The other thing I think needs to be pointed out is that there's another component of this bill, and that does make it harder for the legislature to undo a statutory initiative. And I don't think that that's necessary at this point in time. Everybody talks about the puppy mill bill. The puppy mill bill, some of you maybe remember, was a bad, in my opinion, from a free market perspective, was a bad initiative petition. It was going to put a lot of dog breeders out of business. And this legislature fixed part of that problem with great consternation. If you were here, you remember just how difficult it was for legislators to do anything that undid something that the people did by a vote. It's already difficult. I don't think we need to make it even harder to fix problems with initiatives, statutory initiatives. The other thing I want to point out about this particular HJR is there's a factual problem with the summary statement. So if you have it before you, if you notice the fourth bullet point, or I'm sorry, it would be the last bullet point, it says that the Missouri Constitution will be amended to pass constitutional initiatives by a majority vote in a majority of congressional districts. That's just not accurate. It requires two metrics. You have to have a statewide popular vote, plus you also have to have a statewide majority vote in each of half of the congressional districts. So if you advance this and it goes forward and it goes on the ballot, then there will be, I'll guarantee, a challenge to the summary statement. The courts will end up rewriting it, and it might be something you don't like. So if you do advance it, I suggest you at least fix the summary statement. And with that, again, I would be happy with this HJR if it was made more like HJR74.
Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Ron. Next, in opposition. First, in informational purposes only. Seeing none. Representative Black, do you have final comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, since it's mentioned a couple times, statutory provision that is different than the Senate resolution. It provides that a statutory IP approval would require a 4/7 approval before it could be overturned. It protects the people with regard to a statutory IP approval. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you, Representative. I move now that we go into executive session. We have a quorum. We had a second. Voice vote, all in favor? Aye. All against? Seeing none. HCS for House Joint Resolution 86, 72, and 119. I move that we take up House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 86, 72, and 119. Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. This is the HJR that we just heard relating to approval of ballot measures. Is there any discussion on the bill? Yes, Senator Carter.
I share a little bit of the concern that has been expressed, but we'll vote in favor of it, hoping that we might be able to work on some of the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I move that we vote House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 86, 72, and 119 out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second? Is there any discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senators Gannon,
Aye.
Crawford, Carter, Coleman, Koenig, Rizzo, Washington. 4-1.
By your vote of 4-1, House Joint Resolutions 86, 72, and 119 is due pass. I guess that's it. The Committee on Local Government and Elections is now adjourned. Have a great day.